All right. Good morning, everybody. We are in the live stream for tuition models that actually scale profitably. You know, I just want to have a nice, thoughtful conversation for studio owners on how we can set up our tuition models that can give us some peace of mind as uh, we begin to mature our studios. Um, when I opened my first studio, I thought success meant full classes and happy families. When I opened my second, I realized success also means completing uh, the survivability, managing the surviving complexity. And then when I opened my third, I finally understood that success depends on whether your pricing model can carry the weight of growth. Everything we're going to talk about today comes from the journey of owning these studios. Not theory, not best practices, but real decisions I had to make under pressure, sometimes well and sometimes poorly. So, um, I want to welcome you today. This session is a pause from our day to day urgency. We want to take a step back, look at our tuition clearly, and reconnect with pricing decisions that provide long term sustainability. Not about quick fixes, it's about building confidence around one of the most important levers in your studio. You see, all three of my studios have strong teachers. All three had moments of great enrollment. And all three at different times caused me to cause me deep financial stress. The common thread wasn't demand, it was tuition models that didn't scale as responsibility increased. This workshop exists because I learned, sometimes painfully, that pricing must grow with studios, not lag behind it. So I want to say that something important before we go any further. Some of my early tuition decisions were, in fact, wrong. They weren't careless, they were made with good intentions and limited experience. If you recognize yourself in any of these, please know this isn't about being behind, it's about learning faster than I did. So, perfect tuition model one doesn't exist. It's supposed to reduce stress, support staff, sustain programs, or um, quietly create I'd say pressure should be created because pressure helps with uh, growth. So, so today is all about awareness, and of course, no criticism to anybody. Now, the in the first studio, underpricing felt generous. Um, we were giving away money. I think we were leaving money on the on the table. In Studio 2, it was exhausting because people were negotiating with us. And in the third studio, it felt dangerous. Underpricing rarely causes an immediate crisis. Instead, it shows up quietly because you have burnout, because you delay staff raises, you absorb costs personally, you feel constant pressure despite full classes. You start resenting the very thing you built. So that resentment can build on. And that's where the real cost is. So now, studios, I was undercharging for many reasons that I now recognize clearly. I didn't want families to feel excluded. I felt responsible for their financial situation. believed uh, I believed affordability equaled fairness. I also feared losing goodwill. Those instincts come from care, but without structure, care became self sacrifice. So, you see, in one of my studios, let's refer to that as number two, I realized I wasn't pricing rationally, I was pricing emotionally. A tuition conversation didn't feel like a business, it felt like a personal evaluation of my character. The emotional weight made consistency almost impossible because at the subconscious level, I was tying tuition to care for families, responsibility for staff, personal values, and always saying, well, I'll pay it out of my personal funds when a business should run itself. Now, in one studio, number one, when parents questioned tuition, I questioned myself. I tied it to my identity as a teacher and leader to a number. That made every pricing decision feel personal, and that's unsustainable. You see, tuition doesn't measure your passion, your talent, your dedication. It measures what is required to keep your studio healthy and operational. Now, some of the warning signs I've noticed are payroll felt tighter even when enrollment was good. I dreaded financial reviews. I felt guilty paying myself. Discounts became the norm, not the exception. Those were not failures, they were signals asking for attention. This is where you get signals that invites clarity, not judgment. Um, in early days, in studio number one, my pricing was reactive, which was responding to stress. In studio number two, I was inconsistent and I was changing the tuition without structure. And in studio three, pricing finally became intentional, planned, reviewed, and aligned with growth. And in and then I took that model and applied to studio number one and two. The difference wasn't intelligence, it was experience. So intentional pricing always delivers um, good models and good certainty for ongoing basis. I'd learned that scalable studio scalable studios treat pricing like infrastructure, not emotion. They schedule reviews, they plan increases, they communicate clearly, and they don't apologize for sustainability. So this meant uh, surveys that help me figure out if the pricing is at par with the audience, that if a increase can be planned given to inflation and not as a surprise to the customers. And communication is intentional with customers. They know ahead of time and they stay at par with you on a long term basis. Now, uh, the flat tuition model strengths has, or flat tuition model has strengths and um, weaknesses. So, if you review tuition regularly, I would say at least once a year, and you align pricing with program structure. Because if your product has classes, extra reviews, extra catch up reviews, if a student is not doing well, you're able to offer extra session at no cost and you're not emotional about it, and you also provide family discounts for siblings, Those I've seen as getting great success. Referral discounts, because then families that live, kids that go to school together can come to your studio together. And you can also design system that reduce reactivity. See, scalability is design, it's not accidental. Now, if one studio has flat pricing, it is simple, easy to explain, and easy to manage. And for a small focused program, that worked really well. But when you add complexity, then it can work as well, but because it's hard to understand, and if you have all these, well, but if this, then that, then that can cause um, confusion in customers' mind, and they may think that pricing is created for just getting foot in the door of the customer, but not support them long term. Uh, you see, when you have a flat tuition model, a lot of my advanced students required more rehearsal time, more staffing, more space, but tuition was not reflecting that. And this mismatch quietly drained margin and energy. So you can create a flat tuition model, but it doesn't quite work well. So creating a tiered model, so that grows as the student grows, right, will match pricing to commitment. So different levels of commitment deserve different pricing. It wasn't about charging more, it was about alignment. So when students are committed, then they also show up on time. Um, it also reflects training in intensity. It supports diverse family needs and creates a clearer value in your communication. So tiers provided structure without pressure. Aligning to a tier tuition model always worked well. Once tiers were completely defined, we named them, everything changed. Families understood expectations, staff knew boundaries, and pricing conversations became more calm. Clarity, as you know, always reduces friction. You can develop developmental programs, recreational programs, competitive programs, or intensive tracks. You can have add on rehearsals or specialities. So, a tiered model can always start with something simple to get the foot in the door. And if people want expertise, they want more intensity, then you can charge for additional time spent. Don't give away anything for free. Now, if let's say, as an example, if somebody has taken 10 classes, giving two classes for free, if they're paid for 10 together, makes complete sense. So, when families choose a tier, pricing feels like a collaboration. It's no longer you raise the prices, it becomes the path chosen by the client. And that shift reduces tension immediately. Okay, it doesn't feel, the clients feel more aligned, not imposed. As you know, choice always builds trust. Now, I learned the hard way that if programs are vague, pricing feels arbitrary. Clear program goals make pricing self evident. So, pricing works best when programs have clear goals, have defined expectations. You can even have strengthening goals, testability to each goal as one goes from one level to the next, and you communicate the outcomes clearly. You can use AI for this today. So, clear program goals make pricing self evident. So, our third studio grew without panic. Why? Pricing models were built to absorb growth, not react to it. So, we could add programs, we could add offerings, we could rewrite the tuition every season, doing a hike of last 2 years by 2 to 3%. So, and keep in mind, a model designed for one studio will not work for the other because your local audience is different. You have to factor in uh, local ethnicity, local programs you're teaching, schools, neighborhood, interest in the program, online versus on ground programs, local income levels, average income, partnerships with the local vendors, and so on. So, how's everyone doing? Now, I was talking to the rhythm of the different studios, right? Every studio has a different rhythm. So, based on the clientele you're serving. But going beyond that, um, all three within each studio, fall brings growth. Winter always brings pressure. Spring brings revenue, and summer brings humility. And the tuition must respect that cycle. Thing is, if you know you're against the current, then adopting the current to your growth is the best way. And that means tuning your revenue cycles accordingly. Now, I offer scholarships in all three studios from the heart. And generosity without structure can become stress. So, you want to give access, you're serving diverse communities, you want to support families. This intention is important and needs structure. So, when scholarships um, can become stressful, when again decisions are emotional and case by case. By Studio 3, I learned that unstructured generosity destabilizes the entire system. So you have to be consistent, you have to be responsible, and you have to make sure that there aren't any limits defined. Limits are defined publicly, so you can define a cap of how much scholarship you can give per year, what's the criteria, how much you might invite applications on a monthly basis, and make a decision by a certain day. Uh, you might uh, not, you may guarantee a certain amount of dollars per scholarship, and then the rest has to be paid out of pocket, etc. So once criteria and limits are set, surprises basically disappear. And what becomes useful is you start helping families without fear because we have defined eligibility, budgeted limits, periodic review, and alignment with sustainability because support works best when planned. So, uh, usually from each studio, I am giving scholarships that equate to somewhere between 5 to 15% of the annual revenue. And the cycles are planned cycles of scholarships are planned according to the revenue cycles and when it's most needed, when students are signing up. And scholarships generally apply to year-long programs. So there are many different ways of carving this pie. Um, Accessibility and sustainability was one of the hardest lessons. Accessibility without sustainability eventually fails everyone. A studio can't serve its community if it can't survive, right? So, so that's why you have to balance by design. Because if you are trying to give away too many scholarships and then you have to commit to sustain out of pocket, you're not going to be a good business overall. Now, data changes everything. First time around, I avoided the numbers, knowing the unit cost per hour, uh, number of hours taught by an employee, cost of employee, factoring in overhead, which is um, the facilities cost, utilities, etc. And when I'm checking for numbers, uh, it adds to anxiety. So I did not test the assumptions and I did not make decisions calmly. But once I had all the structure down for my revenue and costs, then I'm able to finally look at it calmly and come up with metrics that can sustain the growth of each dance studio. Now, uh, it's important as you are going through this conversation with me, you might be wondering why and what kind of metrics would I be interested in. You see, uh, we don't need dozens of metrics. For each studio, these are the four that I track. Few numbers tell the truth. So we can have enrollment by program, retention by tier, revenue per student, and seasonal cash flow. These metrics tell me the real story, which program I should keep, which program should not be kept. So, and of course, um, when you're dealing with the metrics, you have to figure in cost and revenue both. Uh, Cost will include lots of different elements, including acquisition cost per customer. So, now, keep in mind, you should always separate fear. Now, what I fear rarely matched my reality. Retention was stronger than I believed. Value was clearer than I assumed. Fear was always loud because that's the emotion that we entrepreneurs get. Facts were quiet until I listened. So, going into my own space to the understand my fears or chuck them out with data is important. Now, with CircleRAM platform that I created, it helps me with clarity. We have automated billing cycles, we track tuition cycles, monitor enrollment trends, and we also provide some uh, cash flow forecast. We, of course, reduce manual work, but we also provide clarity. See, clarity also should be automated. It should not be dependent on emotional energy. So Automation also reduces emotional load. When system can handle billing, tracking, forecasting, um, I regain my mental space and emotional space to lead with clarity. Because if you have clutter in your head about what invoice to send and what renewal to do, it's better to just give it to a system and let it make it happen. So now, for the first time after having CircleRAM AI, I wasn't guessing. Predictability gave me peace and better leadership. I could better plan. I now have fewer emergencies. I do still have stress from season to season sometimes, but I'm mentally prepared for it because I'm understanding the rhythm of each dance studio. Peace of mind is always good in a business. So now, with that calmness, as I observe the data, from time to time, I'll do surveys and I'll uh, provide space for adjustments, working with clients, justifying inflation mostly as adjustment rate, which they accept. I don't create massive changes, but now when we introduce new programs that are more elitish and value to the community, then we use those as higher price points. So change right now doesn't feel threatening to my customers. Now, this isn't about pushing prices higher. It's only about uh, removing necessary stress from your dance studio, right? It's about learning faster than what I had to. I went through 3.5 years of lessons, and I learned that structure replaces panic and clarity replaces guilt. And you build a healthier relationship with the clients. So, being practical, respectful to self and to your clients, grounding yourself in studio reality, and designing to uh, build with confidence. You see, when pricing is aligned with reality, everything softens. Conversation improve and leaderships become steady. It reduces anxiety. You can strengthen boundaries. So, and the biggest improvement comes when you have a 1 year view. So you start looking at your data quarterly, for 2 quarters, and then annually. And it takes time. And the data compounds quietly in margins, confidence, and comps. Because then you can say uh, you have healthier margin, stable staffing, clear planning, and you can make small shifts easy. So I invite you to ask yourself, is my tuition model built for the studio I have today or the one I'm trying to become? You have to look at and then make adjustments to the model. You don't need to rehaul everything today. You have to first gain clarity on what is working. You can take one insight and apply, and you can change everything over the year. Actions will follow slowly and gently, providing you the growth that you may need. My hope is that you leave with clarity and not pressure. Clarity, of course, always comes first. You can start by reviewing one program, one tier, or one assumption, and start with awareness. And if you need assistance with your uh, program creation, I'm always available to provide uh, free consulting for your dance studio. In this community, we want to see you thrive, we want to see you grow, and we welcome you to join our conversation um, at smartstudios.circleram.ai. That's why I created the Studio Circle. So you don't have to learn everything the hard way. So if I can save you a little bit of time or even one painful lesson, then this few minutes of your time was worth it. Thank you for leading with care, and I will see you in our next session. Thank you, everyone.